Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories. Please like and subscribe, and hit that notification icon so you never miss out. Now on with the stories.
I'm not sure if there's anyone out there who genuinely loves HOAs. Unless, of course, you're one of those people who serve on the board and have let the power go to your head. I mean, who doesn't love telling their neighbors what they can and can't do with their own property? But, in all seriousness, HOAs can be a real blight on homeowners everywhere. I've had my fair share of run-ins with HOAs, and I'm not alone. You can find countless examples of egregious behavior by HOAs on YouTube, but I'll share two personal experiences that still make my blood boil to this day. The first incident involved my friend's wife and the garbage disposal. Our HOA had this ridiculous rule that no one was allowed to have their trash cans or recycling bins visible from the street. They wanted us to store them in our garages or behind our houses. Now, I get it, aesthetics are important, but come on. My friend's wife pointed out that during the hot summer months, if you threw away food waste, especially bones from a spicy dish, the garage would start to stink. I mean, who hasn't experienced that? So, she brought it up with the HOA president, and his response still makes me laugh. He said, "This is what I do. I put all my bones and food waste into a Ziploc bag and pop it into my freezer. Then, the night before trash day, I pop that into my bin, and there's no smell." I mean, seriously? Who does that? And what about the poor soul who has to take out the trash? Do they have to wear a hazmat suit? It was clear that the HOA president was more concerned with appearances than with the actual well-being of the homeowners. And that's a common theme with HOAs, isn't it? They're more worried about maintaining some arbitrary standard of beauty than about making life easier for the people who live in the community. The second incident involved me directly. I had purchased some beautiful pieces of slate to improve the curb appeal of my home. I wanted to place them around the trees and flower beds, but the delivery company left the pallet in my driveway. It was there for a couple of weeks when I received a letter from the HOA complaining about the eyesore and telling me I had to move it. But, of course, I had to get architectural approval before I could actually put the slate in my garden. I was fuming. I mean, who does the HOA think they are? I'm trying to improve my property, and they're telling me I need permission to do so? It's not like I was building a skyscraper in my backyard. I was just trying to make my home look a little nicer. The next day, I was mowing my lawn when an elderly man walked up to me and asked if I had received a letter from the HOA about my pallet of slate. When I confirmed that I had, he told me to ignore it. He said the HOA president, who happened to be his neighbor, had a larger pallet in his own driveway, and it had been there for over 6 months. I couldn't believe it. The hypocrisy was staggering. I ended up trading the slate with a friend who gave me some lovely rose bushes and other plants. She used the slate on her property out in the sticks, which wasn't lumbered with an HOA. I was happy to get rid of the slate, not because I didn't want to improve my property, but because I didn't want to deal with the HOA's nonsense anymore. It's experiences like these that make me wonder why we need HOAs in the first place. Are they really necessary? Do they really improve our quality of life? I don't think so. In my opinion, HOAs are just a way for a small group of people to exert control over their neighbors. They're a way for people to feel important and powerful, even if it's just in their own little community. And don't even get me started on the fees. I mean, what do we really get for our money? A fancy newsletter and a bunch of rules that are enforced arbitrarily? No, thank you. I'd rather take my chances without an HOA. I know some people might say that HOAs are necessary to maintain property values, but I call foul. If people want to take care of their properties, they'll do it regardless of whether there's an HOA or not. And if they don't, well, that's their problem. It's not up to the HOA to dictate how people should live their lives. But let's dig deeper into the day-to-day absurdities of living under an HOA's reign. Take my neighbor, Tom. He's an easygoing guy who loves his garden, spending countless hours perfecting his flower beds and vegetable patches. One summer, he decided to add a little fountain in his front yard. A small, tasteful addition that would attract birds and add to the tranquility of the neighborhood. Little did he know, this would become a point of contention. Tom received a notice from the HOA stating that he had violated community guidelines by installing an unauthorized water feature. He was given a week to remove it or face daily fines. The irony was that a few blocks away, another neighbor had an elaborate koi pond, complete with a mini waterfall, which had been there for years without issue. When Tom brought this up at the next HOA meeting, he was met with blank stares and a dismissive shrug. The board claimed that they would look into it, but nothing changed. Tom ended up dismantling his fountain, disheartened and frustrated. And then there was the infamous holiday decoration debacle. Each year, our street would transform into a festive wonderland with lights, inflatables, and all manner of holiday cheer. It was something we all looked forward to, a collective effort that brought the community together. However, the HOA decided to implement new, holiday decor guidelines, limiting the size and scope of decorations. They cited reasons like maintaining uniformity and preventing disturbances. One family, the Petersons, went all out with their decorations. Their display was a highlight of the season, featuring a nativity scene, twinkling lights, and even a small, animated Santa's workshop. They received a stern warning from the HOA to scale it back. The Petersons, being the spirited folks they are, decided to push back. They rallied the neighborhood, collecting signatures and presenting a petition to the HOA. The board reluctantly allowed them to keep their display, but only after much community uproar and heated discussions. The stories could go on forever, each one more ludicrous than the last. There was the time when the HOA tried to ban certain types of lawn furniture because they didn't fit the aesthetic. Or when they decided to regulate the color of front doors, leading to a bizarre situation where neighbors had to get approval for even the slightest change in paint hue. My personal breaking point came with a saga involving my backyard shed. My old shed had seen better days, and I decided to replace it with a new, slightly larger one. I submitted all the necessary paperwork, complete with diagrams and specifications, and waited for approval. Weeks passed with no response. Finally, I received a terse letter stating that my shed was out of compliance due to its size. This was baffling, as several neighbors had similar-sized sheds. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I attended the next HOA meeting. It was like stepping into a Kafkaesque nightmare. The board members argued that my shed would disrupt sightlines and set a precedent for oversized structures. I countered with examples from around the neighborhood, but they wouldn't budge. It became clear that there was no reasoning with them. The whole process felt arbitrary and vindictive. Eventually, I decided to modify my plans, downsizing the shed just to get them off my back. It was a compromise that left a bitter taste, a reminder of the control these petty tyrants held over our lives. Every time I looked at that shed, I felt a pang of resentment. It's not just about the rules themselves but the way they are enforced. There's a level of inconsistency and favoritism that breeds mistrust and animosity. The power dynamics at play turn neighbors against each other, fostering a culture of surveillance and judgment. It's the antithesis of what a community should be. I remember chatting with an older resident, Mrs. Johnson, who had lived in the neighborhood for decades. She reminisced about a time before the HOA, when neighbors helped each other out without the need for formal oversight. There was a sense of camaraderie and mutual respect that seems to have been eroded by the constant meddling and micromanagement. The more I think about it, the more I question the fundamental premise of HOAs. Do they really protect property values, or do they just impose a veneer of conformity that stifles individuality and creativity? Are we truly better off with these miniature bureaucracies dictating our daily lives, or are we sacrificing personal freedom for the illusion of order? Living under the thumb of an HOA feels like being trapped in a never-ending cycle of petty conflicts and power struggles. It chips away at your sense of autonomy and community, replacing it with a constant undercurrent of tension and dissatisfaction. As much as I love my home and the friends I've made here, the presence of the HOA is a shadow that looms over every decision, every interaction. I dream of a day when we can reclaim our neighborhood, where we can make our own choices without fear of retribution. A place where the true spirit of community can flourish, unencumbered by arbitrary rules and the whims of a few self-appointed overseers. Until then, I'll keep fighting the good fight, standing up for what's right, and hoping for a brighter, HOA-free future. I'll show you garbage cans that have holes, and the city of Chicago has a huge rat problem. Also, I rent a storage space. You cannot have any food, i.e. pasta, in boxes that are unopened even because of rodents. And my grandparents always dealt with tons of raccoons. I would go so far as to say that the side of the house would be okay, but not for the HOA. For further reference, my house was built on an incline, so pushing a wheelie bin up and down on grass, especially after rain, was not possible. There were also houses built on intersections where the front of the house was not parallel to the street. For them, it is harder to hide their bins. The HOA in my friend's subdivision requires all garbage cans to be removed from in front of the house by 5 p.m. on pickup day, or they're fined $25. However, my friend and all her neighbors don't get off work until 5 p.m. How are they supposed to adhere to that rule? It's obviously a money grab. They outfoxed the HOA though. They all each pay a retired neighbor on their street $10 a month to walk up and down their street and move their garbage cans twice a week. He makes an extra $150 a month cash and the HOA can't collect a dime. Show me again where it says you have to keep your garbage indoors. The HOA rules state that garbage must be kept in the garage or in an area that is not visible from the street. Keep the bins outside and around the back of your home. If you have a gated fence area, keep it behind there. The problem with homeowners that hate HOAs is that they don't read the rules prior to purchasing their home, don't interpret the rules properly, as in this case, or just believe that rules aren't for them, and when they get called out they somehow get pissed off. We have a similar rule, and live in Arizona, where it can be 118 in the summer. So one's keeping their garbage bins indoors. But we all have block wall fences and a gate. Trash bins go behind the gate and no one can then see them from the street. Before you get all defensive and "I hate HOAs," just think a bit about how to resolve your issue. You even gave the answer in what you have written.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.